MMA is coming back to town. It was a big deal when it was here. There was a big crowd. Justin Gaethje is going to be fighting. And Justin, you're well aware of MMA's history in Utah, and things kind of took a turn a year ago.
Right? Yeah, 2 times in less than a year, 2 pay-per-views. Something went right last year, and the UFC must love this place because for you to get 2 UFC pay-per-views and within a year is incredible.
How did you end up a UFC fighter? Your path here, everybody has a different path.
Yeah.
But your path a little differently. First off, you come from a really small town in Arizona.
Very small. Yep, family's still there. It's called Safford, Arizona. It's about 2.5 hours east of Tucson. But wrestling from young age growing up took me to college, got me a scholarship to go to University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. And yeah, I just started fighting in between seasons. During the summers, I would take 2 or 3 fights, fell in love with it, and I was like, I'm just going to try it. And here I am talking to you.
So I think it was a little more complicated than that. How do you do that the first time? Because obviously you've got skill, you've got expertise, you're wrestling in college.
Yeah.
And so to pivot, how does that happen? Who talks you into that?
Yeah, it's self-desire. I was a huge fan of the sport.
Okay.
Coming up through high school, I watched it. Back in the early 90s and mid-90s, my dad would, show me the pay-per-views when there was no rules. It was much more chaotic back then. But yeah, I think, it's who I am. This wasn't an option necessarily when I was growing up. And then once it became an option, my goal was to be a professional athlete, and I thought I would be a football player. Turns out, God did not bless me with the size that one needs to be a football player. And then this comes along, and it's perfect for me.
Did you ever box along the way?
No. When I took my first amateur fight, I had never been in a fight. Couple big brawls, and I have a twin brother, so we obviously fought plenty growing up, but I had never been punched or punched somebody at that point. And so I had no idea if I could fight.
What's it like? You're in between seasons, and you're in Greeley, and you do this, and you get hit the first time. You take the punch. What was that moment like?
I didn't get punched until my 5th fight, and that was due to mistakes. And that was mistakes because from my first amateur fight to my 5th amateur fight, I never stepped in the gym. I would just do wrestling practice, and then I would be in the best shape of my life coming off the season. And I'd be like, let's take a fight. And I would just go in there, and I was a wrestler, a pure wrestler back then. My first fight, I slammed the guy in 26 seconds and knocked him out. I didn't even punch him. And so, yeah, it was a couple of fights until I actually got to punch somebody. And then the 5th fight, I got punched, got dropped, and luckily I came out and I won. And then I was like, I have to find a coach, and I need to learn what I'm doing here. So that's the route.
Along the way, you were a bouncer. So I think we're all curious.
Yeah. From
looking in the movies. Some drunk idiot look at you and decide you weren't big enough and learn a lesson the hard way?
So someone looks me in the eye, I have no problem looking the other way. I definitely don't look for fights. When I was a bouncer, I broke up 1 fight, and the next day I got fired. I'm not sure why. I didn't do it aggressively. I ran in, there was 2 guys fighting. I gave a guy a shoulder. He hit the ground and slid back 5 or 6 feet, and the other guy just had a huge, his eyeballs got huge. He's like, I'm good. And then they fired me. So I don't know if it was too aggressive. It's probably because I was sitting on my phone when it went down over at the door.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's probably why.
That might have been it. Maybe you do know, right? So in college, you got really close to a bachelor's degree. You've got 1 internship to finish it, or have you done the internship and you're done now?
I did 5 years of college. I finished every single class, and then I needed to do an internship, and I started fighting. And an internship's going to take me 6 months, and since that day, I haven't had 6 months. I've been working every single day towards this goal right here. I'm planning on finishing it. All I got to do is an internship. I've done every class. I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I was like, I don't have my degree yet. How are you going to get me? They're like, you don't have to have a degree from here to be in the Hall of Fame. You just had to compete here. So it's I'm going to make my mom happy one day, and I'm going to finish that. But the crazy thing is I'm doing what human services. I'm inspiring the world, through fighting, but in one way or another, it's what I was meant to do.
So the degree will be in human services. What will you do with that? Assuming you do something.
Yeah,
with
it's a broad degree. It's social work. Mm-hmm. Whether it was going to be probation officer, whether it was going to be working with the elderly, working in as a police officer, anything to give back in human service. I wanted to, when you go to study that, you learn how to listen. And once you learn how to listen, you can help. And so that was the best thing I took from it, is just being able to listen in conversation.
Interesting. So as you go through this process with MMA, what do you know about MMA now that you didn't know when you were that guy who thought, I need a lesson? And for the people watching who are maybe on some kind of similar path or at a point in a career, what would you tell them? Because obviously, you're going to be fighting at the Delta Center, and it's pay-per-view, and I mean, you've gotten to a really high level here. What would you say?
Yeah, when it comes to that kind of question, it's anything in life. I mean, I just believed in myself, and when I faced failure, I chose to get back up, and I chose to keep working, and ultimately, that's all I've done. I have no idea how I'm here or why I'm here. All I know is I'm thankful and I'm lucky to live this life, to get to wake up when I want in the morning. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend fighting for anybody, but I would recommend, believing in yourself and earning your self-respect. And that's how I've got here.
You're 34 years old now. How much longer do you think you'll fight?
It's a question that's been coming up quite a bit. Usually, it's one fight at a time. Obviously, in this sport, you never know. You could have a chronic injury and never fight again. It could come from training. It could come from a car wreck on the way to training. I try to be as real as possible with myself and with my circumstances. And at the end of the day, I'm 34 fights into a career. I'm 35 fights into a career. I'm 34 years old. And yeah, I mean, I have people that I love, that I trust, that are around me, my family, my coaches, friends, that when they want to have a conversation with me, I'll be more than willing to have a conversation. But until that day, I'm going to keep pushing myself and keep believing in myself.
How many times, at this point in your career, how many times a year do you want to fight? What's a good schedule for you?
I fight about 5 times every 3 years. That's what the average has been for the last 8 years. So, but I fought in March. This will be my quickest turnaround in the UFC since probably my first fight. Yeah, so it's cool. I haven't fought this close together because these fights are so big. It takes so much to get the right opponent at the right time on the same timeline. That doesn't have a fight leading up and stuff like that. Trying to get yourself higher in the rankings, trying to get yourself towards that championship belt. And so there's a lot of politics, but you got to trust your manager and your coach to make those decisions, because you can't control it.
So in UFC, how much scouting is there? How much before you go into a fight do you have to know about your opponent, and how much of what happens in the ring is you being the best you, regardless of the opponent?
Yeah, I think it's 100% you being the best. I mean, it's the problem is being confident in the moment and in the chaos, to have the self-recognition that you, for one, deserve to be there, that you've worked hard enough, and that you deserve something more than the guy standing across from you. I don't ever believe that I deserve more. I believe that my preparation has been, 100% perfect. And I've made no mistakes. And if I can go in there with that mindset, then I have the ability to perform and not be too worried about the outcome. And I think that helps me be my best.
Will fighting at altitude be different?
Well, I live in Denver, so I will be coming down in altitude. He trains in Florida. He'll be coming up quite a bit into altitude. So I think it's, at the end of the day, we're both going to be exhausted. It's a 25-minute fight. You can imagine the most exhausting thing you've ever done, and then doing that for 25 minutes. And we're going to be tired. What we work towards is believing in the preparation to work through that feeling. It's hard, and I wouldn't recommend it, but I love it for some reason.
Justin, the date for people who want to go?
July 29th, best live show on planet Earth, guaranteed.
There it is.
Yes,
Justin,
sir.
Thanks for spending a few minutes with us here on Talking Sports.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.